I'd been a child of the interstate, bouncing around the country from Missouri to Florida to California. The pattern was always the same: travel light, travel fast. In the Bay Area, I had resigned myself to homelessness, living on the streets, when an old friend came to my rescue. It was exactly what I'd been looking for. I came to Point San Pablo Yacht Harbor looking for a place to hide from the world. Traveling down that hidden, bumpy, dusty road, I found my new home. Its rickety, weather-beaten buildings, creaky docks, breathtaking natural beauty, and its general aura of a place that time had passed by proved an instant magnet for me. But even more of an attraction were the eccentric, dear, gentle people who called this strange and wonderful place home.
Well, I came to San Pablo Harbor, I think, the way a lot of people come here. It's a very healing place, and they come here to recover from some hurt. And with me, it was a divorce of a long-time marriage. And I was looking for a community. And I'm not very social in a way that I don't go to bars, I don't go to a lot of social events. So I wanted a community that was already here. And I knew, because I had lived in a marina in San Rafael, and because I had sailed here originally when I was a young woman, 25, on a square rigger, and I had come on boats. And I know that a marina is a natural community. A lot of different people come together who would probably never like each other in real life. You have New Age, you have rednecks, you have fishermen, you have people from every end of the political spectrum, from survivalists to tree huggers, I think, as they call us. And we're all here together, and we all have to relate, and we all have to depend on each other in some way and get along. And so that attracted me to this place. I knew that I probably wouldn't have to lock my doors. I could yell for help, and people would come from everywhere. And it's a place that I felt safe in. And of course the beauty, the natural beauty, the ocean, things like that. So that brought me here. I was really fortunate that I met a great teacher here. My first day, or first couple days, I met my neighbor, Sai, and he was this man who I noticed over time was going around spreading good everywhere he went. He cooked meals for people. He invited you in for dinner. He picked up the trash. He filled the potholes. And he was planting this garden, little by little, in this barren levee that didn't have anything on it but seagull shit. It was a dust storm in the summer and a muck hole in the winter. And little by little, he'd go out every day and put a plant in it. And I went, wow, who is this person? And I began talking with him, and he sort of gave me permission to do good, you know, like it's okay to do good things. He's sort of the that bumper sticker, I can't exactly remember, but do beauty and do art wherever you go. It sort of means that, and he's the essence of that. And so, you know, I was a person who, you know, I like to do good, I want to do good, but most people only do good for their immediate family. You know, okay, I'm nice to my kids, I'm nice to the people, but just to go pick up trash somewhere on the road, you think that's somebody else's job. And that wasn't for Sai. Sai owned it all. He owns the earth, and he owns all the people on it. And he gave me permission to do that too. And so I started, you know, following right behind him. I'd go on a walk, and he'd say, well, can't you at least bend over and pick up that trash? And that I was walking right by and not even noticing. And at first I kind of was a little resentful, but then well, yeah, I can do that. And I noticed when I do that, feathers fell from the sky, and I felt better inside. And so he kind of taught me. And one day I noticed he was out in the garden, and I asked him if I could help him. Could I bring a few little rocks and put them in his garden? And he said yes. And that opened the door for me for the garden and to begin working here. And what started as a few little rocks became seashells, became gravel, became bricks from the beach, became planting and digging and picking, and the whole sharing of the vision of this garden, which is one of, you know, Sai's philosophy, is to make paradise where you are. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're in whatever place you're in, that is paradise, and you just have to wake up to that and start treating it like that. And so that's what we began doing, was making paradise where we were. And that's how I began assisting Sai in the development of the garden. The idea was we would just, well, he said, well, since this is paradise anyway, we might as well make it look like it.
Hello, my name is Sai, and I'm the major force behind this garden that you're about to see. I moved here after the '89 earthquake, longing for a place more stable on the ground. That's my house. It moves itself, but never so much as an earthquake. And being a gardener, I was faced with a really ugly sight. This was entirely bare, aside from those few plants that grow along the edge in the tide water. And the levee itself is built of rock and mud from up the hill. So in the winter, it becomes mud, and in the summer, it becomes a dusty brick. It was not a very possible place to grow, and besides that, several times a year the wind pushes salt water over the whole thing. The levee, by the way, I told you the top of it is rocks and mud. Underneath it's ships. This was formed first by derelict ships, and then in 1950 a John Wayne movie was made here, and the ships were blown up as part of the movie. The idea behind the garden, partly it's just, you know, some people just got to make beauty. And I had this idea that it would be good to go with what's coming. In other words, I said, always incorporate, never reject, always incorporate. So we'd find things like this at Berkeley's Urban Ore. This says cope. And so this is called the Wheel of Cope. So if you're really depressed and just can't see your way out of it, come out to the Wheel of Cope and wander around for a while. It's been known to help. And somebody, by the side of the road out here, dumped all these bricks. And these are limestone bricks. Obviously, they were part of a kiln. And they're full of fossils. So at one time, this was known as the healing circle, because we had a circle of those fossilized rocks around. It's kind of growing in now, hard to tell, but changes happen. It's okay. Lots of aloes. The point of the aloes, other than they grow here and they're beautiful, is that they feed the hummingbirds. And it makes me feel very happy to see hummingbirds out here. I don't know what it is about hummingbirds, but they lift my spirits, and they seem to do it for everybody else's. You should come again in mid-April, is when all of the ice plants are in. These orange and yellow ice plants over here are just the harbingers.
I think one of the things that I'm doing both here at the marina and here at the Canal Child Care Center is making an effort to create community. And, you know, where I grew up in Michigan, in a very small rural town, That wasn't necessary. You inherited community. I went to the same school, sat in the same chair that my father and my mother did when they were in high school. Even when I go back now, I see my first grade teacher and my second grade teacher. All the people are still there. Community exists, and you don't have to create it.
Well, I first started out here in 1949. It was my first experience with the harbor out here. And we came out here to do some work on a boat that was on the beach. My partner and I, after work, we were working at Richmond Boat Works. At the time, anyway, while we were out here, the guy that owned the harbor talked us into taking over the boat shop out here. So we did. We leased the boat shop for 3 years and struggled through it. We didn't make any money, but we stayed alive. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a very high quality of life anymore, really. I'm retired, hardly ever get out of this house and what have you, but it's a good place to live. Everybody's got to be somewhere. So I love it. I like everybody out here. There's nobody out here that I don't like. I don't socialize with too many of them, but there's somebody stopping by here several times a day to see how I'm doing, or do I need something from town and whatever. They take pretty good care of me.
Out here in California, I love the freedom. I love the freedom of ideas and the freedom to pursue so many different spiritual and different ways of thinking, but I miss the community. And I miss the long-term community. And it's a very difficult thing. You have to create it. You have to be committed to working towards it. And so in my job, that's why I've been there 19 or 20 years, not because it's been easy, not because I've always known it was the absolutely right thing, but because it was a job worth doing with people who were worth being with, and who we could create something together much greater than we could do individually.
A lot of these things are in process. Everything's in process. This is pretty interesting, actually, too. It's a field tobacco, and we brought it over from next door. That was the rendering plant where the last gray whales, California gray whales, were, once they'd been killed, they were cut up and rendered into their meat and fat products. Actually, as late as early 70s, 71, 72. A couple of years ago, it burned down, and we were concerned that there's a forest of these next to it growing on the old whale parts. We were concerned that the fire might have done something to them, so we brought some out here just to see if they would survive, though they seem to be happy over there still, too. They smell very interesting, and it's probably psychedelic, so I wouldn't suggest smoking it.
This is the fig tree, and I'm sure Sai has told you about it. He decided that, well, we decided together that if you're going to have paradise, you need a fig tree. I mean, it's just like, basic. So the first fig tree Gary brought, a friend of ours, died. And because it's very harsh conditions out here, so he brought another one from his garden, and we planted it, and every day people from the community would come and tell the fig tree that they loved it, that they knew it was really hard to live out here, that the conditions were, rough, but that they really wanted it. They wanted it to live. And one by one, they started putting things in the fig tree, like Fan Chan, who lives on a houseboat, brought a scarf blessed by the Dalai Lama. And then pretty soon people started putting jewelry and earrings to just remind the tree how valued it was. And not only did it live, but 3 years later it's giving figs. And the tradition, I think, of hanging things in the tree just sort of continued. We gathered a lot of broken glass, and what I would do is any glass I had left over from the masks, I considered sacred in a way because I had gathered them with intent. So we put them here in the dragon. And I've heard there's an African tradition that broken glass sort of keeps away bad spirits. And the dragon, we always considered the dragon was the protector of the garden. And we put it, of course, right in front of our houseboats, which we wanted protected from all kinds of things, the wind and the sea, and especially from sinking. But I call this the Four Corners. And it's really to honor the winds, because the winds are really important here. Where the wind blows at this marina determines if I'm seasick or not, because if it blows from one direction, I have a nice ride, and if it blows from another direction, it's very rocky. So in that tradition of honoring the elements that affect you and are in your environment, rather than creating a buffalo here or something which really wouldn't relate to this environment, I created an homage to the winds.
People bring things. Sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. This is a ginger plant that's been kind of barely surviving for several years. Someone brought it. This agave, actually, someone brought an agave log that they'd torn down a tree, cut down a tree, just put it there, and it sprouted. So, always glad for something like that. Also, my partner Ben did work with mosaics. The dragon on the side of the houseboat is his last work. And George Ann, my neighbor who moved here a couple of years later, was really turned on to the garden too. Partly because of the beauty. I mean, look at the site. This is 100 square miles of San Pablo Bay. And we can't quite see the usual on a clear day. You can see 55 miles to Mount St. Helens. Today it's a little cloudy for that. And though it's only about 4 miles over to Marin.
This blue ball, someone came one day and said that they had carried it around with them for years. They had made it as a young woman. She had made it as a young woman, and she no longer wanted to carry it around, but she wanted it to be someplace that people appreciated it. So I thought it, you know, had a creation kind of feeling, so it should go next to the fig tree. That's the way the garden is. It's an interactive art project. People bring things, and often we don't like them. Bill Burns, for example, brought something and put it in the garden that I absolutely hated. He brought a shell, a ballistic shell, that had a quote on it that was sort of anti-male, but not, you know, and sat it right in the middle of the garden. And the first thing I wanted to do was remove it. And then Sai reminded me that that's not what the garden's about. It's about inclusiveness. Even the things that are uncomfortable, even the things that you don't agree with, even you don't throw those away either. And so, you know, it's still here in the garden, but the plants have grown over it. You can't even see it now. And it's exactly, it's a great lesson. And the garden contains a lot of those lessons about acceptance, and not just, we're so quick to, when something bothers us, to get rid of it instead of looking at its lesson, or just allowing it to be and watch what happens to it. And you'd be surprised how you stop caring, or it changes, or you change, or something like that. And it's amazing. And so Sai and I intentionally use that garden, you know, for that purpose. And brings me over to what we call the office. This is another example of how an art piece developed over time through a lot of different people's input. This was a rusty typewriter that I think Bill brought and set in the garden one day. And then I thought it looked kind of cute, so I put a little green thing under it, and we started calling it the office. And somebody had found a hand, and stuck it in there, and somebody else put a pen in it. And pretty soon, one of the women who lives at the harbor on a houseboat, her name's Fanchan Lewis, and she's a writer, she began putting poems in there and changing them every month. And so now this is an art piece that displays her writing, and often they're poems about the harbor. It's sort of like, if this is Cannery Row, Fanchan is sort of our Joan Steinbeck, and she writes character sketches and writes all about the unusual people, and sometimes you can find them here at this typewriter.
And the deeper in the significance of the garden, as it became obvious, I mean, when there were just a few little plants, nobody saw but me, you know, but I knew they were there. But once it started to be big enough so that other people could work here too, it started to change things. People started coming out on the levee more. There was another place to come and socialize instead of the bar at the end of the harbor. You know, there was a place where you could be quiet or friendly and see the beauty and be quiet. And it has made an effect. You know, partly it's because the people who like this kind of thing are attracted here, and partly people who never knew they liked this kind of thing find out, because here it is to experience. So, you know, something that started out as basically I was tired of looking at ugliness out of my living room window and wanted to do something about it, has now entered into a lot of people's lives in a positive and joyful way.
This part of the garden is new. It's about a year old. It's the first time that I got involved with actual plants. Usually Sai did the planting, and I maybe helped carry the soil, but I mainly did the bricks and most of the, you know, the structural things, and Sai did the plants. But about a year and a half or 2 years ago, he had what I'd call a really serious health project. And usually you'd see him out here every day, every morning working, and he wasn't able to do that. And after this bloom time, a lot of dead, you know, there's a lot of dead flowers, and he wasn't able to take those off. And people kept coming to me and saying, "Is Sai okay? Is Sai okay? Is Sai okay?" And after many people had said that, I began to realize that one of the things this garden was a metaphor for Sai. And since it was going to be a metaphor for Sai, I decided to control that in a certain kind of way and say, well, I want Sai to bloom and to grow. And so I then dove into the aspect of the garden of planting and making it bigger with the intent of that it was a metaphor for Sai and Sai's health. And I didn't tell anybody this. In fact, I didn't tell Sai this. I really haven't told anybody that I just sort of kept it as of the many intents that this garden encompasses as a secret intent. And so these beds represent this, and the walkways and all of this represents the expansion that I did with that intent in mind. And look, they're growing. So I'm not so bad with plants. I didn't think I had a way with plants, but look how beautiful they are. This is really the first major bloom of the plants that I put in the ground. So I'm really, really pleased. And it's the same thing with this community here and with the garden here. There's plenty of things about the harbor that are frustrating, and plenty of things about the garden that get to be frustrating sometimes, but it's a greater commitment to being connected and creating community in a place where, with the internet and with Oprah and with all the different shows, you don't have to go outside of your home for a sort of a pseudo-intimacy. And so now if you want that, you have to not effort it, but you have to be committed to it. And so as I look at my life and what I'm creating, it's very obvious to me that I'm committed to community and committed to long-term community and not just a job. This isn't a stepping stone to somewhere else. I'm not, biding my time here while the big break comes. This is it.